I have told this story maybe 100 times now. To new crew, to dock workers, once to a survey captain who did not believe a single word of it until I showed him the scar. I still don't tell it right. Some stories are like that. You live through them and then you spend the rest of your life failing to put them back into words. But I'll try, because people should know what she did, and they should know what it means. My name doesn't matter much. On the manifest I was listed as Maintenance, Tier 3, which is a polite way of saying I fix toilets and air scrubbers on a supply station that nobody important ever visited. Relay Station Kessom-9, a rock with lights on it. We hung in the dark between two shipping lanes, and for 11 months of the year nothing happened. Then the gray verdict docked, and everything I thought I knew about the galaxy came apart in my hands. Let me start with the sound. That's what I remember first. It was a low hour. Station time doesn't mean much out there, but we kept a clock anyway because humans go strange without one. It was the middle of what we called night. Most of the crew were asleep. I was in the lower ring, replacing a coolant valve that had been screaming at me for 3 days, and I heard the docking klaxon. That was already wrong. We had no ship scheduled, not for weeks. I wiped my hands and went up. The ship that had latched onto our station was not one of ours. It was long and dark and built wrong, in the way alien things always look wrong to a human eye, too many angles, no soft edges anywhere, like something that had never once been touched by a hand that wanted comfort. Down the side of it, in a script I couldn't read, were markings that glowed a dull orange, the color of a dying coal. I found out later what those markings meant. They were a warning, a quarantine mark, the kind of thing that in a sane galaxy means do not open, do not approach, burn if breached. We didn't know that yet, so we opened the door. The crew of the Gray Verdict were Thren. I'd never seen a Thren in the flesh before, only in the training reels. They're tall, taller than any human, and they move slow and careful, like every step costs them something. Their skin is gray and layered, almost like slate, and their eyes are set deep and far apart, and there is no warmth in them anywhere. Not because they're cruel. They just aren't built for it. The Thren feel things, I learned. They just don't show it the way we do. Their commander came through the airlock first. He was old. You could tell by the way the plates of his skin had gone pale at the edges. He looked at us, me, and the 2 others who'd woken up, our night officer, a woman named Priya, and a big quiet man from engineering we all called Bear, and he said, through the translator box on his chest, in that flat clicking voice they have, "We require sanctuary. Our containment has failed. We have a live specimen." Priya was in charge. She was small and sharp, and she had run this station for 6 years without once raising her voice, which if you've ever managed people you know is a kind of miracle. She stepped forward and she said, "What kind of specimen?" And the old Thren commander went quiet. I want you to understand something. I have since learned that the Thren do not go quiet. They are a species that answers directly. It is a point of honor with them. Silence for a Thren is like a scream would be for us. So when he stopped, when those deep-set eyes flicked just once back toward the dark of his own ship, the hair on my arm stood up, and I didn't even know why yet. "It is a Vorreth," he said finally, "a juvenile." None of us knew that word. "I don't know that word," Priya said. "No," the commander said. "You would not. Your species has not encountered them. Pray that it stays that way. Here is what the Vorith are. I'm going to tell you now, up front, so that you feel about the story the way I want you to feel, so that you understand the weight of what happened. Because if I let you meet the cub the way we met it, small and soft-tied and shivering, you'll make the same mistake we almost made. The Vorith are the reason there is a dead zone in the galaxy the size of 100 star systems that nobody flies through. They are an apex predator from a world so hostile that its own name, translated, means something close to the wound that does not close. They evolved on a planet where the day could boil you, and the night could freeze you, and everything was trying to eat everything else. And out of all that, the Vorith came out on top. They are pack hunters that don't need a pack. They are ambush killers that can wait motionless for 11 days. They can taste your fear in the air literally, chemically, the way you'd smell smoke. Full grown, a Vorreth stands taller than a Thren and can move faster than the eye can follow, and there is a saying among the older species of the galaxy, a saying so old that nobody remembers who said it first. You do not fight a Vorreth, you only decide how you die. The Thren had one aboard. A cub. They had been transporting it, one of only a handful ever captured alive, from a research station to a secure containment world. Halfway there, the containment failed. A power fault. The adult they'd been transporting alongside it had gotten loose, and it had killed 9 of their crew before they put it down, and it had cost them 3 of their remaining crew just to do that. The cub, the small one, was all that was left. And their systems were failing, and they were bleeding atmosphere, and they had limped to the nearest station with a working dock. The rock with the lights on it. They brought the cub aboard in a containment pod. It was about the size of a coffin, that pod, black and sealed, with a small reinforced window near the top. And through that window, I got my first look at it. I don't know what I expected. A monster, I suppose, teeth, claws. What I saw was a small creature, curled in on itself, pressed into the corner of the pod as far from us as it could get. It was maybe the size of a large dog. Its fur, if you could call it fur, was a deep, dark, oil-slick color that seemed to drink the light. Its limbs were long and thin and folded up tight, and its eyes, when they opened, when it looked at me through that little window, they were huge, and they were gold, and they were terrified. I know now that I was projecting, that I was doing the exact thing a human does, the thing that makes us who we are, and also the thing that has gotten so many of us killed. I looked at a small, frightened thing, and my chest ached, and every part of me wanted to open that pod and pick it up and tell it that it was safe. The Thren commander saw my face. He'd seen that face before, I think, on other humans. He said, quiet. Do not. I stepped back. Your species, he said, and there was something almost like pity in the flat clicking of his voice. You are known for this. Across the settled worlds you are known. You reach out. You see a claw and a fang and a killing thing, and you reach out anyway because some small part of you refuses to believe that anything wants to hurt you. He looked at the pod. It has killed the gentlest of our handlers. It looked at her with those same eyes. Do not. Now I have to tell you about Della. Della Okonkwo was our medic. She was the only person on Kessom-9 with any real training in xenobiology, which she'd picked up on a colony run before she came out to the middle of nowhere to get away from something she never talked about. She was maybe 30. She had a low, easy voice and a habit of humming under her breath when she worked, old songs her grandmother had taught her, and she was the kind of person that animals liked. All animals. She tamed a colony of scavenger rats in the lower ring that nobody else could get near. She fed them scraps and named them and swore they came when she called, and we laughed at her, but I saw them come when she called. Della was asleep when the ship docked. By the time she came up to the medical bay, the Thren had already set the cub's pod down in our quarantine room, a reinforced chamber we normally used for decontaminating cargo, and they were arguing with Priya about how long they could stay. The cub was dying. That was the thing nobody had said out loud yet. The pod's life support had been damaged in the same fault that killed the adult. The cub had been slowly suffocating and freezing for 2 days. Its systems were failing. The Thren didn't have the equipment to help it, and honestly, I think a part of them didn't want to. They had watched this thing's parent kill 9 of their friends. You couldn't blame them. But the mission was to deliver it alive. Their honor was tied up in that. And so they were stuck, unable to save it, unwilling to let it die, unable to leave until their ship was repaired. Della looked at the readouts. Then she looked through the little window at the small shivering thing in the corner of the pod. And I watched her face do the thing my face had done. It's a baby, she said. It is a Vorith, the commander said. It's a baby. Della said again, in a completely different tone, and I knew right then that we were all in trouble. I want to be fair to Della because a lot of people who tell this story make her sound like a fool. She wasn't. She was the smartest person on that station. She read the same warnings we did. She listened to the Thren describe what a full-grown Vorith could do, and she believed every word of it. She wasn't stupid, and she wasn't reckless, and she didn't think the danger was fake. She just thought the danger didn't matter more than the dying. There's a difference. It's a hard difference to explain to somebody who hasn't met a person like her. She looked at a creature that could kill her, that would maybe kill her, and she did the math the same way we all did. And then she threw the math away because the thing was suffering and she could help, and to her, that was the end of the argument. That's a human thing. I've thought about it a lot since. It's not bravery exactly. Bravery is when you're scared and you do it anyway. This was something else. This was a person who looked at the whole cold machinery of survival of me first, mine first, the strong live and the weak feed them, and simply refused to participate. Refused on principle with her whole chest. The Thren have a word for it now. They coined it after Kessom-9. I won't try to pronounce it. It translates roughly to the ones who will not let go. That's what they call us now, all of us because of her. I need to get it out of that pod, Della said. The commander stood up to his full height, which put his head near the ceiling of our little medbay. Absolutely not. Its air's contaminated. Its temperature regulation is gone. It's dying in there and it's dying scared, and I'm not going to stand here and watch a child suffocate in a box. It is not a child. Everything's a child, Della said, when it's small and it's dying and it's alone. And she started pulling on gloves. Priya stepped in, Priya, who I loved, who had a cool head when the rest of us lost ours. Della, walk me through this. You open that pod and then what? Then I stabilize it. Warm air, clean atmosphere, I get some fluids into it. And it takes your hand off. Maybe, Della said, probably not. Probably not. Della stopped. She looked at all of us. Me and Priya and Bear and the row of gray silent Thren, and she said the thing I've never forgotten. Look at it, she said. Really look at it, not at what it'll be, at what it is right now in that box. It's not hunting. It's not stalking. It's pressed into the smallest shape it can make in the farthest corner it can find, and its heart, look at the readout, look at the rate its heart is going like a bird's. That's not a killer. That's not a monster. That's a baby that watched its whole world end and got shoved into a box by strangers, and it is terrified, and it is alone, and I am the only person on this station who's going to treat it like that matters. Nobody said anything. So yeah, Della said, and she picked up her kit. Probably not. Here's a thing about the Vorreth that nobody knew back then, that we only learned because of what happened next. Everyone in the galaxy had studied the Vorreth as adults, as killing machines. Every scrap of data, every fearful legend, every dead zone warning, all of it came from encounters with the grown thing, the ambush predator, the pack hunter, the taster of fear. Nobody had ever in all of recorded history kept a Vorreth cub alive long enough to learn anything about what it was like before it became the monster. Because Vorreth cubs don't survive capture. They die. Every single one, every time. The researchers assumed it was stress, fragile physiology, something about their brutal homeworld that made them unable to endure a cage. They were wrong. The cubs weren't dying of stress. They were dying of grief. Vorreth, it turns out, the deadliest thing the galaxy had ever produced, the nightmare of 100 settled worlds. The Vorreth raised their young with a tenderness that would break your heart. On that terrible world, the wound that does not close, the only thing that let them survive at all was each other. The bond between a Vorreth and its young is the most powerful attachment ever documented in a living thing. And a captured cub torn from that, alone, surrounded by cold and fear and creatures that hated it. It simply gave up. Its body kept the wound open on purpose. It let go because there was nothing left worth holding on to. That's what was happening in the pod. The readouts the Thren were watching, the failing systems, the dropping temperature, those were real, but they were downstream. The cub wasn't just suffocating. It was choosing not to breathe. And Della, who knew none of this, who couldn't have known any of this, walked over to the pod and pressed the release, and the seal broke with a hiss, and the lid slid back, and every Thren in that room went for a weapon, and the commander shouted something the translator couldn't keep up with. And Della reached into the box. I have never in my life wanted to look away from something so badly, and I couldn't. None of us could. She reached in with both hands, slow, humming, that low tune under her breath, her grandmother's song, and she got her hands under the small, dark, shivering shape, and she lifted it out. The cub didn't fight. It was too weak to fight. It hung in her hands like a wet cat, limp, its long limbs dangling, its huge gold eyes half shut. And Della pulled it in against her chest, against the warmth of her, and she wrapped her arms around it and she just held it. There, she said, soft, the way you talk to a frightened horse. There, I've got you, I know, you're okay. The commander had his weapon up. It was aimed at the cub, which meant it was aimed at Della, because there was no daylight between them now. She'd made sure of that. She'd put her own body between the gun and the thing she was saving without even seeming to think about it. Put it down, the commander said. Put it down, human, when it wakes, when it takes your fear. I'm not afraid of it, Della said. And the strange thing, the thing I'll swear to on anything you like, is that she wasn't. I was watching her. I've seen fear on 1,000 faces, my own in the mirror plenty of times. Della didn't have it. She stood there in the middle of that cold gray room with the deadliest creature in the galaxy pressed against her heart, and there was nothing in her but a kind of fierce, aching tenderness. The cub felt it. I know that now. The Vorreth taste fear in the air chemically the way we smell smoke, and this cub dying alone, surrounded for 2 days by nothing but the sharp acid stink of creatures who were afraid of it and wanted it dead. This cub suddenly found itself pressed against something warm that had none of that in it. None. Not a trace. Just heat and a heartbeat and a low humming song and arms that held on. Its eyes opened. I saw the moment it happened. I was maybe 10 feet away, frozen, my back against the wall. I saw those huge gold eyes open all the way and focus, for the first time since it had come aboard, focus on the face of the person holding it. And I watched it breathe. A real breath, a deep one, the first one it had chosen to take in 2 days. Its narrow ribs expanded against Della's arm, and it let the breath out slow, and something in it, some awful tension, some decision it had made in the dark, let go. The readout behind us, the one the Thren were watching, the heart rate that had been racing like a trapped bird, it began to slow. Not the slowing of death, the other kind. The kind that comes when a body finally believes it's safe. See, Della whispered. She wasn't even talking to us anymore. She had her cheek down against the top of the cub's dark head. See, there you go, baby. You just needed somebody to hold on. The commander lowered his weapon, slowly. I don't think he decided to. I think his arm just came down on its own because his brain couldn't process what his eyes were showing him. Because the deadliest thing in the galaxy, the wound that does not close, the nightmare of 100 worlds, was pushing its head up under Della's chin. The way a kitten does. The way anything small and warm does when it's found the thing it was looking for. It pushed its head up against her jaw and it made a sound, a low, broken, rattling sound. A sound none of the Thren had ever heard a Vorith make. A sound that their entire species did not have a record of, and Della laughed wet-eyed and said, "Oh, you want Cuddles. Is that all you wanted him? Somebody to hold you, look at you. You're not scary at all." She was wrong about that. It was very scary, it just wasn't scary to her. But I understood in that moment, watching her, something about my own species that I'd never quite had words for. We are not the strongest thing out there. We're not the fastest or the toughest. Any one of a dozen species could tear a human apart without breaking stride. The galaxy is full of things that are better killers than we'll ever be. But we do this exact thing. We look at the monster and we don't see the monster. We see the frightened child inside the monster, the lonely thing under the fangs, the small scared heart at the center of the killing machine, and we reach out. Even when it's stupid, especially when it's stupid. We reach out and we hold on, and sometimes it gets us killed, and sometimes it changes the entire galaxy. The commander of the gray verdict stood there in our little gray medbay, an old soldier of a species that answers everything directly. And for the second time that night, he had no words. Della sat down on the floor, just sat cross-legged, with the cub in her lap still humming, and the cub curled into her, all its long limbs folding up, small again but soft now, easy now, safe now, and it closed its eyes and it slept. Really slept. Not the fatting half-sleep of a dying thing. The deep, heavy, trusting sleep of a baby that has finally been put down somewhere warm. "I'll need warm fluids," Della said in her normal voice, not looking up. "And someone bring me a blanket. And could somebody please stop pointing that gun at us? It's making the room tense." Bear brought the blanket. That was the first night. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. That the cub got better and the Thren fixed their ship and everyone flew off happy. But you don't tell a story 100 times because it ended nicely. You tell it because of what came after, because of what came for us 3 days later out of the dark, and because of what Della did when it did. I'll tell you the rest, but you need to know one more thing first to understand it. The Thren had told us the truth about the Vorreth, but they'd told us the small truth. They'd told us the cub was one of only a handful ever captured alive. What they hadn't told us, because they didn't think they'd need to, because they thought they'd be gone in a day, was how it had been captured. The adult that had gotten loose on their ship, the one that killed 9 of their crew. That hadn't been a random specimen. That had been the cub's mother. And a Vorith mother, it turns out, the Thren learned this the hard way, learned it in blood. A Vorith mother does not stop, cannot stop, will not stop as long as her heart is beating and her cub is out of her reach. They'd put her down on the ship, they thought. They'd fought her and they'd hurt her and they'd sealed her behind 3 feet of blast door in a cargo hold that no longer had life support, and they'd assumed the cold and the wounds had finished her. They had assumed wrong. And out in the dark, in the wreckage of the containment hold of a ship that was even now clamped to the side of our little station, something that should have been dead was still, slowly, patiently, breathing. 3 days. That's how long we had the cub before everything changed. 3 days that, looking back, feel like the best 3 days that ever happened on that miserable rock, and I say that knowing how they ended. She named it coal. Della did. Because of the color, the deep light drinking black of it, and because, she said, coal looks dead and cold but you warm it up and it burns. She said it like a joke. It didn't turn out to be one. Coal got better fast. Faster than Della expected, faster than the Thren had ever seen. By the second day it was eating real food, warm broth off Della's own fingers, then torn meat from the galley stores that Bear brought down without being asked. By the third day it was following her. Everywhere. That long-limbed dark shape flowing along behind her through the corridors of the lower ring, silent as a shadow, its huge gold eyes fixed on her back. If she stopped, it stopped. If she sat, it poured itself into her lap. If anyone else came too close too fast, it went still in a particular way, low, coiled, its lips peeling back off teeth that had no business being that long on a thing that small. And then Della would say its name, just once soft, and it would settle. Only for her, it settled only for her. The Thren watched all this with something I can only call religious dread. Their commander, his name, I learned, was Vaskin, spent most of those 3 days standing at the edge of the quarantine room, not speaking, just watching, his deep-set eyes going from the cub to Della and back, over and over, like a man trying to solve a problem that had no solution. On the third day he came to find me. I was down in the coolant runs again, because the galaxy can be ending and a coolant valve will still scream at you. He folded himself down to my level, which for a Thren is a whole production, and he said, "Your medic, she does not understand what she has done." "She saved its life," I said. "Seems like she understands that fine." "No," he was quiet a moment. "She has been chosen. Do you know what that means to a Vorreth? The bond, the one bond. We did not know they could form it with another species. We did not know they could form it at all, outside their own kind." He looked at his gray hands. "In 4,000 years of our records, human, no living thing that was not Vorreth has ever been held by one and lived. And your medic sits on the floor and it sleeps in her arms and she calls it baby. That a problem?" He didn't answer right away, and I've thought since that he already knew, that some old soldier's instinct in him had already added it up 3 days before the rest of us, and he just couldn't make himself say it. "A cub that is bonded," he said finally, "is a cub that is no longer alone. It will call. It cannot help but call. It is what they do, it is the whole of what they are. They reach across the dark for the ones they love." He stood up. "And out in the dark, human, there may still be something listening." I didn't understand him, not then. I understood him about 4 hours later, when the station lost power to the entire dorsal section, and the emergency lights came up red, and Priya's voice came over the comm in a tone I had never once heard her use in 6 years. "Breach in the aft cargo mating collar. Something's coming through the wreck. Everyone to the core, now." Let me tell you what had been happening out there in the dark, on the far side of a blast door, in the ruined guts of the gray verdict's containment hold. The mother had not been dead. She had been dying slowly on purpose, the same way her cub had been, a wound held open in a body that had decided there was nothing left. She'd been sealed in the cold with her injuries, and she'd been letting go. And then on the first night, something had reached her. We don't fully understand how. The scientists who came later argued about it for years, some chemical signal, some sound below our hearing, some sense the Vorreth have that we don't have a name for. But the shape of it isn't in doubt because we watched it happen in reverse. The moment Della pulled that cub against her chest and it chose to breathe again, the moment its terror turned to safety and its little heart began to slow, some part of that crossed the dark. Some part of that reached through 3 feet of blast door and the cold and the ruin, and it touched the dying thing on the other side. And it said, in whatever language the Vorreth speak to each other in the deep of them, "I'm alive, I'm safe, come." And the mother stopped dying. She turned around in the cold and the dark, and she started to breathe again too, not the slow surrender but the other kind, the furnace kind, and for 3 days, while we fed her cub broth off our fingers and named it and let it sleep in our medic's arms, the deadliest thing in the galaxy was tearing its way, silent, patient, unstoppable, through the wreckage of a dead ship toward the sound of her child's heartbeat. Toward us. The core of Kessom-9 was the one part built to survive anything. Blast shielding, its own air, its own power. We'd never once had a reason to use it. We herded into it now, me, Bear, the handful of other crew, the gray silent Thren, Priya white-faced at the controls, and we sealed the doors, and we watched the internal cameras, and we saw her come. I will never forget it. I have seen it in every dark room I've slept in since. She came out of the breach into the red-lit corridor of our station and she unfolded, and she was God. The training reels don't do it. Nothing does it. She stood taller than Vaskin, taller than the ceiling should have allowed, and she moved wrong. She moved like water poured downhill, like the dark itself had decided to walk. And she was wounded, you could see the wounds. The Thren's weapons had cratered her side and one of her legs dragged, and it did not slow her down at all. She flowed through our corridors, and every camera she passed she looked into, once, straight into the lens, as if she knew we were watching, as if she wanted us to see her coming. She was tasting the air. You could see it. That great dark head swinging slow, drinking the station, reading it, the fear of us, all packed together behind our door, the sharp acid stink of a dozen terrified creatures. She read all of it, and she did not care about any of it. She was looking for one heartbeat. And in the core in Della's arms, Cole lifted its head. I saw the cub change. We all did. For 3 days it had been soft, a shadow that wanted cuddles, a baby that slept in a lap. Now in Della's arms it went rigid. Its head came up. Those gold eyes went wide and fixed on the sealed door, and it made a sound, not the broken, rattling purr we'd all gotten used to. A different sound. High and thin and desperate, a sound that climbed, and it started to struggle, to twist, to claw toward the door. Calling back. Here, I'm here, here. No, hey, Cole, no, easy. Della was fighting to hold it, and it was hurting her now. Those claws that had been so careful for 3 days, raking her arms, drawing blood, and she wasn't even flinching. She was just trying to hold on. Cole, stop. You'll hurt yourself. It's calling to it. Vaskin's voice was hollow. It's telling it where we are. Where she is, Della said, and she looked up and her eyes were wet, and I watched her understand the whole thing at once, 3 days of it all at the same time. That's not a hunter out there, is it? That's not a monster hunting us. Her voice cracked. That's her mother. Oh my God, we took her baby. That's a mother looking for her child. The room was silent, except for the cub's thin, desperate calling. You have to give it back, Della said. Vaskin said, it will kill us all the moment that door opens. You have to give it back. And she was crying now openly, holding a struggling child that wanted its mother, and the truth of it was in her face, and it was breaking her. We did this. Look at what we did. We fought her and we hurt her and we shoved her baby in a box, and she crawled through a dead ship on a broken leg for 3 days to get it back. And we're sitting in here calling her a monster. She's not the monster. We're the give it back to her. She will not stop at the cub, Vaskin said very quietly. You do not understand. There is no reasoning with what is out there. She will take the cub and then she will kill every living thing on this station because we are the ones who took it. That is not cruelty. That is what she is. That is justice to a Vorreth. We are guilty, and she will collect. And that landed on the room like a stone. Because he was right, and we all knew he was right, and there was no version of opening that door that didn't end with all of us dead. Except Della was looking at the cub in her arms, and I saw her face change one more time from grief to something quieter, something settled. The same look she'd had 3 days before, standing over the pod when she threw the math away. She's not coming for us, Della said softly. She's coming for her baby. We're just in the way. Della, Priya said, whatever you're thinking, don't. She just wants her child back, Della said. That's all any of this ever was. She stood up, the cub gathered against her chest, its thin, desperate calling right against her heart. So I'll give her child back, me. Not a box shoved out a door, not us hiding while we throw it out like garbage. She wiped her face with her shoulder since her arms were full. I'll carry it out to her myself, and I'll put it down in front of her, and I'll let her see that the last thing that held her baby loved it. That is insane, Vaskin said. Maybe. Della was already walking to the door. But she can taste it, remember, she can taste what's in the air. She spent 3 days breathing nothing but everybody's fear. Let her breathe something else, just once. Let the last thing she smells off the creatures who took her cub be that one of them loved it. She looked back at us, steady now, terribly calm. That's the only thing I've got that might reach her. It's the only thing we are that she doesn't expect. And if it doesn't work, she shrugged, gentle, then it was going to get me anyway. Better it gets me handing her baby back than hiding in a corner. Nobody could move. Open the door, Della said. And Priya, God bless her. I don't know how she did it, Priya opened the door. I went with her. I don't know why I did it. I'm not brave. I've told you that. I fixed toilets. But when Della walked toward that door with the deadliest thing in the galaxy on the other side of it, my legs just carried me after her, the way your legs do sometimes when your brain hasn't got a vote. Bear came too, and after a second, and this is the part I still can't get over, Vaskin came too. The old Thren commander, who understood better than any of us exactly what waited out there, who had watched this creature kill 9 of his crew. He fell in behind us, unarmed, and when I looked at him he said, "If your medic is going to teach my species what your species is, human, I will not learn it hiding behind a door." The corridor was red and cold and silent. Our footsteps were very loud. And then it wasn't silent because we heard her. She came around the bend ahead of us, low, dragging that ruined leg, and she filled the whole corridor, and she saw us, 4 small warm things walking toward her, which nothing does, which nothing in the galaxy had ever done, and she stopped. Della kept walking. "Della," I whispered. "It's okay," she said, not to me, to the cub, to the mother, to all of us. "It's okay, it's okay." The mother's head came down level with us. Close. Close enough that I could feel the heat coming off her, could see the wounds up close, the black blood, the exhaustion in her that 3 days of unstoppable hunting hadn't been able to hide. Her lips peeled back. That great head swung toward Della, toward the cub against her chest, and her whole body coiled, and I knew, this was the moment we all died. And Cole stopped calling. The cub went quiet in Della's arms, and it did the thing it had done that first night. It pushed its head up under Della's chin, that small gesture, that "I'm safe, I'm home" gesture, and then it turned in her arms toward its mother, and it made the broken purring sound. The one none of the Thren had ever heard a Vorreth make. It made it looking right at its mother, from the arms of the human holding it. She kept me warm, she held on, she loves me. The mother went still. That great dark head came forward, slow now, so slow, and it stopped a hand's width from Della's face. And it breathed in, long, deep, tasting the air between them, tasting the human who held her child, reading everything that was in her. And there was no fear in it. There was no fear in Della anywhere. I was standing right beside her, and I was so afraid I could barely stand, and Della had none. She stood a hand's width from the jaws of the deadliest thing in the galaxy, and there was nothing in her but that same fierce, aching, hopeless tenderness she'd had for a dying thing in a box, and now it was pointed at the mother too, at her too, at the exhausted, wounded, grieving thing that had crawled through hell to find her baby. "There she is," Della whispered. Her voice shook, but not with fear. "There's your mama, see? I told you. I told you somebody was coming. She never stopped. She was always coming." And she went down slowly onto her knees, and she held the cub out, both arms an offering, and she said, "Here, he's yours. He was always yours. I just kept him warm." And she set the cub down on the cold floor between them. Cole took 2 steps and pressed itself against its mother's wounded side. The mother did not kill us. I need to say that plainly because for years people didn't believe it. The mother did not kill us. She stood over her cub and she lowered her head and touched it all over, nose to nose, that great deadly head suddenly gentle in a way that hurt to watch. And the cub made sounds and she made sounds back, low ones, sounds that went into your bones. And then she raised her head and she looked at Della, kneeling there in the red light, unarmed, weeping, empty-handed. And she looked at her for a long, long time. I will never know what passed between them. Whatever a Vorith is, whatever they know. Whatever they can read in the air off another living thing. She read all of it off Della, all 3 days of it. The broth off the fingers and the humming and the baby, you're okay, the whole of it. And she read that when the moment came Della had walked out to her with empty hands and a full heart and given the child back. The mother lowered her head, to Della, down and forward until her brow nearly touched the floor. Vaskin made a sound behind me I'd never heard a Thren make. That is, his voice failed. In 4,000 years, human, no one has ever, he couldn't finish it. She bowed. The deadliest thing in the galaxy bowed its head to a weeping medic on a maintenance station because the medic had loved its child. And then she gathered her cub against her ruined side and she turned, and she flowed back into the dark the way she'd come, and just before the shadow took her, the cub looked back, over its mother's shoulder. Those huge gold eyes found Della one last time. And it made the purring sound. Goodbye or thank you, or I'll remember you, I don't know. I like to think it was all 3. Then they were gone. The gray verdict left 2 days later. Ship patched, cub and mother sealed willingly this time. The mother walking into the containment hold on her own 3 good legs with the cub at her side, because Vaskin had made a promise, and the mother somehow understood it. He promised her they would not be caged, that they would be taken home. To the wound that does not close, the terrible world, the only place either of them had ever wanted to be. He kept the promise. I checked years later, he kept it. Before he left, Vaskin came to find Della. He stood in front of her, this old gray soldier, and for a long moment he didn't speak. Then he said, "My people made a study of yours when we first met you. We concluded you were weak, soft, sentimental to the point of foolishness. We noted that you would reach out to things that would harm you. We considered it a flaw." He paused. "I am amending the report." "Yeah," Della said, tired, still bandaged from the cub's claws. "What's it say now?" Vaskin was quiet a moment. "It says the humans are the only species we have ever encountered," he said, "who can look at the deadliest thing in the galaxy and see, before anything else, that it is afraid, and who will cross the dark unarmed to hold it." He inclined his head. "Not a bow, but close. We used to think that would be the end of you. Now I think it may be the thing that saves us all." Then the gray verdict undocked, and the long dark ship turned, and it slipped away toward home, and Kessom-9 went back to being a rock with lights on it. That's the story. I've told it 100 times and I still don't tell it right, but there's a reason I keep telling it, and it's this. Everyone out here, all the old species, all the ones who were flying between stars while we were still figuring out fire, they'll tell you the same thing about the Vorith. You do not fight a Vorith. You only decide how you die. They'll tell you it like it's the wisest thing anyone ever said. But there was one thing none of them ever tried. In 4,000 years, not the Thren, not anybody. Nobody in all that time ever looked at the deadliest thing in the galaxy and thought to try being kind to it. It took a human. It took a medic on a station nobody's ever heard of, humming her grandmother's song, who looked at a killing machine and saw a scared kid and reached out anyway. She was wrong about it, you know. That whole first night. She thought it just wanted cuddles. She held the deadliest predator ever documented, and she laughed and said you're not scary at all, and she was completely, dangerously, gloriously wrong. But here's the thing I've figured out, after 100 tellings. It doesn't matter that she was wrong. Because she reached out like it was true, and in the end that made it true. That's us. That's the whole of what we are, the thing that scares the old species and the thing that might save them. We are the ones who will not let go. We look at the monster and we hold on, and sometimes it kills us. And sometimes the monster bows its head and picks up its child and goes home. I still hear her sometimes in the dark, the purring, the goodbye, and I think about a mother crossing hell on a broken leg for the sound of one heartbeat, and I think about a human kneeling with empty hands, and I think, maybe that's all any of us are in the end. Just small warm things in a very big dark, reaching out for each other. And refusing, absolutely refusing to let go.